Gittin Daf begins immediately following a Mishnah, and it contains two additional Mishnahs. We're discussing having multiple divorces written on one get document and how that could be good and how that could be no good. So our last Mishnah has said if you have 5 couples that are getting divorced and they decide to combine their divorce documents into one, so whether it's valid or not depends on how it's written. If it's written all grouped together, what the Mishnah calls klal, then it's kosher. If it's written separately for each one, then it's pasul. The only way that it's kosher is the last one, which is closest to the signature. That's what's kosher, because since each divorce above that is separated from the signatures, we're afraid that the signature is only going on the last one. And if only the one which is close to the signature could be okay. So the understanding here, therefore, is that whatever's close to the signature is good. If it's all considered to be one unit, all 5 are written together as one, that's kosher, because then the signature is going on all of them. So the question that we have is, what is the meaning, what is the definition of combined and separate? So the Gemara discusses 3 levels of combined, and the question is, which 2 are combined and separate. So the highest level of combination we'll be discussing is if it lists all the men and then it lists all the women. That is, the men's names are all combined: Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Reuven, Shimon, or divorcing their wives, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Zilpah. Now, that's the most combined that everybody agrees counts as combined, and that's okay. Now, the one that's the opposite extreme, which is not combined, is referring to where each one has a separate time. You write Avram and Sarah, and it's at this time. And then you write Rachel and you write Yitzchak and Rivka, and it's at this time. So if there's a separate time for each of them, that is most definitely called separate, and that's no good. Now, the question is, what about the middle case, where you have the men and the women written together, and it's all in one time? So you say that on Sunday, Avram is divorcing Sarah, Yitzchak is divorcing Rivka, Yaakov is divorcing Leah, and so on and so forth. That's the machlokes, and the machlokes between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says that is considered to be separate, and therefore it's pasul, and that's the Mishnah was referring to when it said pasul. That was the Mishnah was referring to when it said separate. Rav Yochanan says no, that's called kosher, that's called together, and that would be okay. The case that the Mishnah said was pasul because it's 2 separate, as if you had separate times for each of them. Right now, the Gemara has some kashas. The Gemara says Rabbi Abba asked Rav Yochanan, if you have the couples written separately, if it's the same time, but the couples are written separately, what we call the middle case. So Rav Yochanan said that that's called together and that's kosher. Why the signatures of the witnesses might only be going on the last couple? Like we have a brisa that says that if you have a shtar and at the end it says She'elas Shalom, it says hello, is a Shalom Aleichem on the get, and then the signature is assigned, you have to assume that the signatures are only going on the She'elas Shalom at the end. So therefore, how could you assume that it's going on the couples before? Meaning he's asking that the couples are all written separately, the signing should only be referring to the last couple. So the Gemara says it's true if it's written without a vav between them. If it's written with a vav between them, then it's kosher. So if you have shtar that's written and then it says shalom, then it says she'elas shalom afterwards, so that's without a vav, just she'elas shalom, so that's pasul because it's a new thing. If it's visha'alu, then that's kosher because it's all included in one. So here you had Avram divorcing Sarah, Yitzchak divorcing Rivka, Yaakov divorcing Leah, and so on and so forth. So if you have that, then it's all considered one, and the signatures at the end are going on all of them. So that is kosher. Next question the Gemara asks on Rav Yochanan. He says that if you have the date written separately, that's pasul because it's different, because the signature is only referring to the last one. The Gemara says a different reason it's pasul, and that's because the date of the first one is not accurate, because you have the date of the first one, then the date of the second one. By the time you get to the date of the 5th one, it's not the same date as the date of the first one. You're telling me if there's 5 different dates, we're understanding that the dates are different and not saying the same day. So therefore, it should be possible because the get was written not on the date that it was signed. So the answer is no. We're talking about where the date is the same. It's all Sunday. It's just written again and again, Sunday, Sunday, and Sunday, Sunday. And therefore, there's no problem of the date being wrong. It's just the fact that it's written separately and the signatures are only referring to the last one. Next, the Gemara says that Ravina is kasha to Rav Ashi on Reish Lakish's shita. Reish Lakish holds that it would be considered to be okay only if it was all written together as one, all the men and then all the women. So he asks, but the Torah says, you write a get for her. It has to be exclusive to her, only for her and not to two people, not to her and to her friend. So how would this be kosher? So Rav Ashi answered that you have to rewrite afterwards the couples together. You do have to write each couple separately. You have to identify each one. So you have to write it twice. In the beginning, you write all the men, then all the women, and then you know that the witnesses are signing on that. And then you rewrite Avram and Yitzchak. Then you rewrite Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and so on and so forth. So now Reish Lakish, the Gemara says that Ravina asked the other way. Why is that true? But we have a halacha where you're giving a shechor to two avadim, you don't have to rewrite it. So you should have the same drasha from get isha to get shechor. They're linked. We know we have a hekesh between the two. Whatever halacha applies to one applies to the other. So if you have to rewrite it by get isha, you should also have to rewrite it by get shechor. But we don't say that you have to rewrite it by get shechor. We have a brisa that says if somebody gives all his property to two avadim, they are kaina the property, and they each have to free each other because they each own each other now. So the Gemara answers that, Rav Ashi answered, he said that over there also, if you look in Parakashaleach, we said that that's talking about where you wrote a separate star for each of them. I'm not talking about where you wrote both of them in one star. All my property is given to you and you. It's not how he did it. The separate star for each. Here also, you have to at least write it separately within the get itself. The Gemara now says there's a brisa explicitly like Rav Yechanan, there's a brisa explicitly like Reish Lakish. The one like Reish Lakish we're going to have a bit of a problem on, but they're pretty much explicit. So the one that says explicitly like Rav Yechanan holds that the second case is considered to be together and that's all kosher. The third case is the one that is possible, that's where you have a separate zman. So the brisa says you have 5 people who wrote the get together. So it says the name of the husband and the wife, the husband and the wife, the husband and the wife, and then it says a date once for all of them, and signatures below that. They're all kosher and has to be given. The get should be given separately to each of the 5 women. Now, if you have a separate date written for each couple, then the only one that's kosher is the last one that's right above the signatures of the witnesses. Now, here the brisa says repeatedly, Sarah argues, and he says if there's a space between them, then it's puzzle. If not, then it's kosher because the date is not a hefsek, the date's not a problem. The second brisa the Gemara brings says like Reish Lakish, including the adjustment that we said earlier. So the brisa says if you have 5 people who wrote a get together, you have the names of all the men, then the names of all the women, and then it rewrites the couples, and you have a one date for all of them, and the witnesses sign afterwards as kosher for all of them, and you give the get to all of them. This is our highest level that we said before. Now the case that the brisa says is no good is if you have the date for each of them, and here it brings the machlokes about the space, as we said before, except it brings the other side of the machlokes. So the Tanna Kama says if you have a space between them, then it's possible. That's the Rabbi Yehuda we saw before. And we bring Rabbi Meir, who argues that even without a space, it is possible because the time that's written separately for each of them is a psul. So whereas Kash is obvious here, the case of which we said is puzzle in the brisa which we said supports Reish Lakish goes to the third case to say where there's a psul. It goes to the third level where you have a separate date for each of them. Didn't we say that Reish Lakish holds is puzzle even if you have one date? The only thing that's puzzle according to Reish Lakish, the only thing you need to make it puzzle according to Reish Lakish for the top 4 is to have the names of the couples written together separately. That each couple, the man and the wife, and then the next man and wife. So why do we go to the case where there's separate dates? The more answer is no. The case where you have all the men written together and then all the women, there you need to have the dates written separately to be a psul. In that case, if you would have the case where we said we're having one date is puzzle is only if you have the couples written independently. If, however, you have all the men and then all the women, the only case where that would be puzzle is if you have a date separately for each of them. So that's why we go to that case in defining the psul. We're now beginning our next Mishnah, which discusses if you have 2 gittin written on one paper in 2 columns. So you have one get on the right, one get on the left. And then underneath both of them, you have 4 lines of signatures. Now, the Mishnah talks about two that are signed as Ivrim and two that are signed as Yevanim. We're talking about Jews here. Both Ivrim and Yevanim are Jews. But the way Ivrim sign is they write from right to left, Reuven ben Yaakov Eid. So that means that the signature starts all the way on the right. Though Yevanim sign is when they write Reuven ben Yaakov, it means Yaakov is the son of Reuven, because they mean to say that Reuven has a son, Yaakov. That's how they write. That means that Yaakov is the name of the aid, and it starts all the way on the left. So the Ivrim signatures are referring to, they're signed under the get on the right, and the Yevanim signatures are signed under the get on the left, because that's how it's written. So the Mishnah Paskins, if you have two signatures Ivrim, two signatures Yevanim, then whichever one is the top is machshir, the get, that the name of the actual witness, the son, is signed underneath. So if the two Ivrim are on top, since they start on the right, they're being machshir the get on the right. They're just continuing the signature over to the left, but they're signing under the get on the right. If the two Yevanim are on top, they're the top two, then they're signing on the get on the left, because the name of the aid is on the left, because it's saying the son of Reuven is Yaakov. That's what Reuven ben Yaakov means. So therefore, they're signing on the get on the left, and the get on the left is kosher. The one that are on the bottom two lines, meaning if the Ivrim are the bottom two, then the get on the right, so that's puzzle. And if the Yevanim are the bottom two, then the get on the left, that's one that they're referring to, that is puzzle. The Gemara is going to wonder why that's puzzle. The Gemara will have a couple different ways to be machshir it. Now, the next case is where you have signed Ivri, Yevani, Ivri, Yevani. That's, you have two signatures for the one on the right, two signatures for the one on the left, but they're written in such a way that one starts under the left, one starts under the right, one starts under the left, one starts under the right. So you have the Ivri signed, the first one signed normally from right to left, and then in the next one, he started all the way on the left and continued on the following line so that his name starts on the left. So you have one Ivri signed on the right get, one Ivri signed on the left get. And then you have the same thing with the Yevani. The next one, he starts all the way over on the left, like he normally does. And then he starts on the right and continues on the following line on the left, so that he has his name under the one on the right. So here you have an Ivri and a Yevani on each get. So here the Mishnah Paskins is puzzle altogether. And the Gemara will want to explain why that is as well. So let's begin that Gemara. So the Gemara first discusses why that we have a number of ways to be machshir the bottom two. We're talking about where you had two Ivri and then two Yevani. So let's say the two Ivri are on top. So they're being machshir the get on the right. And the two Yevani are referring to the get on the left. They're the lower two lines of the signatures. So that get is puzzled. The Gemara wants to know why. So the Gemara says, first of all, let's be machshir it, because one, it says Reuven and it says Ben Yaakov. So let the Reuven part, let's assume that it's not Reuven ben Yaakov. It's two different witnesses. One is Reuven and one is Ben Yaakov. So if under one get it says Reuven and under the next get it says Ben Yaakov, it's referring to two different people. One is signing his name Reuven, and under the next get there is someone else signing his name as Ben Yaakov, and it's not Reuven ben Yaakov. And it's enough to sign one's name as Ben somebody. I have a Mishnah that says if somebody signs Ben Ish Pliny Aid, that's kosher. So the Gemara answers because it doesn't say Reuven under one and Ben Yaakov under the other. It says Reuven Ben under one, and then it says Yaakov Aid under the other. So the Gemara says, well, Yaakov Aid should also be kosher. Reuven Ben should be good because that's one name. Reuven, who's the son of someone, and then it says Yaakov Aid, so you have just the name Yaakov. We have a Mishnah that says if you sign just your name, as long as you say Aid afterwards, it's kosher. So Yaakov Aid should be fine. So the Gemara answers either it didn't say Aid, or we happen to know that this is not someone named Yaakov. His name is not Yaakov. His name is Reuven ben Yaakov. That could be, but Yaakov is not his name. So the Gemara says, well, maybe he means to sign both Gittin, but in one he's using his name, one he's using his father's name. One he uses the name Reuven ben, and the other one he uses the name Yaakov. He decided to sign his father's name instead of his own name. People sometimes do that. So the Gemara says, no, people don't do that. People don't use their father's name instead of their own name. So the Gemara says, well, maybe it's his siman. It's not his name, it's a symbol. And we see people sometimes sign with a symbol, like we have Rav signed with a fish, Rabbi Chanina signed with a branch, Rav Chizda signed with a stamach, Rabbi Shai signed with an ayin, Rabbi Bar Huna signed with a flagpole that held up the sail of a ship. So maybe his symbol is his father's name. Someone says, no, a person would not be so brazen as to use his father's name as his own personal symbol. So the Gemara asks, okay, fine. So that's no good. But why can't the bottom two signatures be machshir the get that they're on? Who cares that they're the bottom two? They should still be able to refer to the get that they are referring to. So you should have the top two signatures refer to the get on the right, if they're both ivri, and the bottom two signatures refer to the get on the left. What's the problem? Someone says, maybe you'll tell me the problem is that you have a space of 2 lines between the get on the left and the signatures that correspond to them, because there are 2 lines later. Someone says, that's only, we said Chizkiah, there's only a space of 2 lines between the get and the signatures is only a psol if it's empty. If they're filled with things, even if they're filled with names of kroivim, it's not a problem. So here they're filled with things, so it should still work. So the answer is no, because since we have 2 ivrim on the top line, we're afraid that these Yavanim signed as ivrim. They signed in reverse, and therefore all 4 signatures are really referring to the get on the right. We don't know that you have anything that's the get on the left at all. The Gemara points out, however, that Zeiri has a different version of this Mishnah.